I know you started out as a child actor.
And I'm going to talk quite quietly. That's why I wanted you to mic me, because I'm saving my voice. But
Okay, maybe I should.
can you hear me at this level, or is it?
I think so, but
Yes, it's that thing that's playing right on. But we'll be around for 20 minutes or so.
I think you're fine.
Okay.
It'll take too long to set it up, and I don't want to waste time with you.
All right, thank you.
I know you started out as a child actor.
Yes.
Tell me about acting as a child in England.
It was fun. I mean, my two sisters and I were spotted by some agent, and I guess because of our red hair and our grades of age and height, we looked appealing, and she signed us up, and we actually all ended up getting some acting jobs. And Jane stuck it out for the longest, of course. She's still an actor to this day. I did it until the age of about 15, I guess. But I enjoyed it a lot. I learned a lot, and got to act with some very fine actors, and learn by being in some good movies, and some bad ones too.
So what good movies were you in?
Well, the first movie I did was called The Planter's Wife, and it became called Outpost in Malaya in the US. And Claudette Colbert played my mother, so it was a distinguished cast, and it was a pretty good movie.
How did you get into music?
Well, getting into music is, I grew up with music. My mother, was a professional musician, and my father was an amateur musician. He was a doctor. He played the piano and sang. So the house was surrounded by music. So music was just part of the environment, and I played various instruments. Never played them properly. Didn't learn to read properly. I was very lazy about music lessons. But my interest in music and my enthusiasm for music was there as long as I can remember.
And so did you start playing the clubs in London, or how did you start a band?
No, we didn't play clubs. I was in a couple of different bands. We had a skiffle group that I played guitar in. I played double bass quite badly in a Dixieland jazz group. The leader of the band was the trumpet player, and leader was Adrian Lyne, who went on to be a very well-known and successful film director. So, we played some clubs, but I didn't sort of book it. I just showed up when I was told to. And then, of course, when Gordon and I met at school, and we specifically formed a duo, and we did start doing gigs and stuff.
Okay, so I know how did your sister meet Paul McCartney?
Jane was in her role as sort of film star and an actress. She was a celebrity and was invited in that role to go and see the Beatles when they came down to London for one of their first big concerts. It was the NME poll winners concert. They'd won the poll for Best New Band, not a shock. And she was invited to go and see them and write a sort of review. And so she was taken backstage afterwards as the visiting celebrity and met them all. So that's how they met.
Did you meet him then?
No, shortly thereafter. I mean, I wasn't at the concert, no. But they, she got on with all of them, and Paul asked her out and so on. So I met them all in a pub somewhere. I don't remember where. I think it was just days after Jane met them. It might have been a week or so.
And so you guys all hit it off?
Yes, I mean, we didn't talk that much, but yeah, we all got on.
Okay. And so this is before they're just starting out, correct?
This was when Love Me Do was a hit. I mean, the fact that they won the NME thing as Best New Band, and they weren't just starting. I mean, this was post-Liverpool, let's put it that way. People always asking me, if I knew Liverpool well. I never went to Liverpool at all. Okay. So my experience with the Beatles only began when they moved to London, which was, by definition, when they already had kind of made it. Because they became a sensation in Liverpool, and then got on the train, came to London, and blew us all away.
Did you get any American TV shows in London?
We got a few. We got I Married Joan, and we got, Phil Silvers in, what's the name of the show? He's playing a soldier.
Sergeant Bilko.
Sergeant Bilko, of course.
It's a funny show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Sergeant Bilko. And a couple of other ones, I don't remember. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure. A lot of British TV was homemade.
But you didn't get the variety shows, did you?
I don't think so. Which ones? We didn't get Ed Sullivan for sure.
You did.
I don't think we got. I don't really remember. I mean, there wasn't room for much because we only had one channel.
Oh, only one.
Yeah, BBC. And it only worked for certain hours in the day, so
Okay.
no, I don't think we got the variety shows.
Now, so your sister is dating Paul. Everything's getting along. How does he move into your house?
He was there a lot. He would come over for dinner and bring his laundry to be done or whatever. So eventually he was there so much. I think he liked the organisation of our household a bit more than the chaos of the Beatles flat. Plus, he was crazy about my sister, understandably, and so eventually, our parents offered him the guest room at the top of the house as a kind of pied-à-terre when he was in London. But essentially, he moved in completely and stayed with us for 2 years.
Were there a lot of people, like girls, hanging around your flat, or not flat, but your house?
Sometimes, yes.
A lot of them.
Yes.
And so, I got to cut to the chase. So he writes. He has that song "Roll Without Love." How does that happen?
It was an unfinished song that I'd heard him play, and I liked it. And then that was all that came of it until such a time as we got signed by EMI Records and we were choosing songs to go on the first recording day. And our producer, Norman Newell, asked if I knew of any good songs that we might want to try other than the ones he'd already picked out from our live set. And I said, maybe I do, because I was thinking that perhaps this unfinished song I'd heard of Paul's might suit us. So I asked Paul if it was still an orphan song, because he'd explained to me that it was unfinished because John didn't think much of it, so the Beatles were definitely not going to record it. And so since we now had a record deal, I felt it was okay to ask Paul if we could have a go at that song, and he said yes.
Why didn't John like it?
Apparently, he thought the opening line, "Please lock me away," was kind of silly. And he would allegedly, I didn't hear it myself, say to Paul, okay, I will lock you away, the song's over. So it was very clear the Beatles weren't going to record it. Whether he didn't like anything else about it, I don't know.
So you record the song, it becomes gargantuan. It's huge.
Yeah.
Were you ready for that?
Yes. I mean, in a sense, I suppose you're never ready because no one knows exactly what is right. But yes, that's what we were aiming for. If you're trying to be pop stars, what you want is, screaming girls, and we got them.
So did you immediately start doing? I got a little bit of this when I was a little younger. I saw Ready Steady Go. Were you on that show at the beginning?
Yes.
How was the show? It looks like a fun show.
It was great. I mean, it was. We like shows where the music was mostly live, and Ready Steady Go was primarily live. We did all those shows. Thank You, Lucky Stars, Ready Steady Go. Can't remember what else there was, but those are probably the biggest ones.
Okay, so do you do Top of the Pops? Is that still?
Oh, and Top of the Pops, of course, yes.
And is that the biggest one of all of them?
In terms of audience, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know. It's an interesting question, but I don't know the answer.
And so, okay, you're hitting it big. So you come to America, but you don't do the Sullivan Show right off the bat,
Right.
correct?
Right.
Why?
World Without Love. Alan Klein, the man who ended up, managing the Beatles, as you probably know, at that point was managing several different artists, including Bobby V, and he had realized that all these good songs were coming out of England, and at that time they weren't being hits in America. This was right near the beginning, and he had arranged that the British top 10 sent over to him new British releases sent over to him even before they were in the top 10. And so he got a copy of World Without Love and gave it to Bobby V to record, and Bobby V covered it, and he was a regular on the Sullivan Show. So he did it on the Sullivan Show, so they didn't want us because we were doing a song that had been on 3 weeks before.
Did you do any other shows in America?
Gosh, yes, lots.
I mean, when you came over that initial trip, what shows did you do?
I don't really remember which shows happened at which times. At one time or another, we did Lloyd Thaxton, we did Shindig, we did Hullabaloo, We did Hollywood Palace. We did the Milton Berle show. We did, I don't really remember what happened on which trip, but we did lots of different.
What do you think of America?
Oh, I loved it. It lived up to my expectations. I was a fan of America already. I had a poster of New York on my wall, and I had copies of Downbeat with the jazz clubs I wanted to go to when I got there, circled. So, and it was great. I mean, here we were. The poster I had of the New York skyline. Suddenly I'm walking along that very skyline, being chased by screaming teenage girls trying to tear my clothes off. Life doesn't get much better than that.
Are the English and Americans, are they different?
That's the kind of question 16 magazine asked us back in 1964.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Is the yes would be the rude answer. No, but Americans are more enthusiastic.
Okay.
They showed their emotions to a greater degree. The 16 magazine question, the real one, of course, was always, do you like American girls better than English girls? Which is kind of a variation on the same theme. But yes, Americans are more generous in showing their emotions. We English were a little more buttoned up. At least we were back then, for sure.
Tell me about the 60s in London. It must have been great, the swinging 60s.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Why? Why is it so fun?
I suppose because I see it as a reaction to the gloom and doom of the 50s. Britain was in a post-war depression. There were bomb sites everywhere. People forget how primitive England was then. Half the houses in England didn't have indoor plumbing. I mean, it was a country that, and we had no money. Had rationing. So the 60s were a reaction against all of that. I truly believe that essentially we were saying, thanks for winning the war and all that, and stiff upper lip and tighten your belt, but we would rather enjoy ourselves and wear silly clothes and invent some new music, which we did.
Were there some particular places you used to go to, because people don't know particular names, that were really fun to go to? Like a bar or a pub or a club?
Well, that would be before and after becoming pop stars. When we had favorite pubs we would go to at school, I mean, we were probably illegal anyway, but then once we were pop stars, we were sort of unofficially inducted into this world, and there were key clubs like Tramp and Dolly's and the Ad Lib Club that were really fun, but you had to have some money and you had to get in, which meant you had to be somebody cool. So that was a new world for us. But yeah, there were some key clubs that were important.
I believe, this is my opinion, when I was a boy, I used to love Go to Pieces. I think it's a sweet song. Mm-hmm. I do. Tell me about Del Shannon and that song.
We were touring Australia with Del Shannon and the Searchers, a fine English band, and a couple other acts. And Del had this song that he'd written that he didn't think was right for himself, and he actually showed it to some other American artists, it turned out, and they turned it down. And on the road in Australia, he played it for the Searchers and tried to talk them into doing it, and they didn't like it. I mean, they didn't think it was right for them. They were very polite, turned it down. And I'd overheard it. He never actually offered it to us. I'd overheard it and said, I think that song could be a hit. Can we do it? And he said yes, and we did.
I know in the 90s he finally did it. Did he ever do it before then? He had an album with Jeff Lynne. I think it's called Rock On. I can't remember.
I think he may have done it. I thought he'd done it a bit earlier than that, but I don't know.
Okay.
He didn't do it. I mean, we did it first, for sure. I mean, people think sometimes that Del's was like the original and we covered it. No, Del wrote the song, we recorded it a little later. To the best of my knowledge, he then recorded it.
It's a lovely song.
Yeah, it's very good.
You were friends with most of the other bands in the British Invasion, correct?
We'd have to go through a list, but generally I knew most of them, I suppose.
And so, Brian Jones. People really don't know about Brian Jones much anymore. Tell me about Brian Jones.
We were friends with Brian. I mean, we toured with the Stones in that era, and Gordon and Brian used to hang out together and go to pubs and stuff and get drunk, and that's why Brian played on a couple of Peter and Gordon records.
He did?
Yes, he did.
Which ones?
A song called Love Me Baby, which was the B-side of something or other. Do you know what it was? It was a B-side anyway of something, and the song we wrote, and Brian played a great harmonica solo on it.
Tell me about Pop Gear, the movie.
It's awful.
What's a fun movie?
I mean, it's got no story in there, which I'm not sure. Was that the one with Jimmy Savile, or was that the other
The
one?
one, I think Matt Monroe's in it. Isn't
Right.
he?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, there were a few of those movies. They just shoot like
Okay.
you do sing. You'd lip sync the song, and they'd put a movie together and give it a title. When we did it, we had no idea what the name was. I'm not really sure. Pop Gear was the one that Jimmy Savile, was the disgraced DJ.
I think he was, but I'm not.
You know about Jimmy Savile?
Yeah, with the long blonde hair, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
He was found guilty of numerous
It's kind of a
episodes of child abuse.
He's like Gary Glitter kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Okay. In those early days, did you ever meet the royal family yet? Or was that later?
No, I didn't really meet them. I haven't really met. Well, I met some of them. Yes, I never met the Queen. No, at that point we hadn't met any members of the royal family.
Okay, so you're doing well in England. You're doing well in the States. Eventually, the band ends. Why does the band end? Why do you Gordon break up?
We didn't officially break up, actually. I was interested in becoming a record producer. Gordon was interested in making an album on his own. Peter and Gordon hadn't had a hit lately. And so we gradually drifted into a sort of separation. We never actually said, that's it, Peter and Gordon doesn't exist. We never said, we'll never make another record or do another gig. And I confess that as the decades passed, my assumption was that we would never do another gig or make another record, but it turns out I was wrong on both counts. Because after a 27-year gap, we did do both.
And did the psychedelic thing turn you off at all?
No. You mean the psychedelic music in general? Or?
You'll be saying, I don't think you guys were so psychedelic. Everything kind of changed. I didn't.
Well, we did an album that was a little bit took a step in that direction. I suppose the Hot, Cold, and Custard album. But I was a big Pink Floyd fan back then. Huge fan. I went to all the Pink Floyd's gigs, and I like their music a lot.
And so you start working for Apple. How's that? Is it great to work for Apple?
Yes, it was great. I mean, it was a very exciting time, and obviously working for the Beatles.
Okay.
Working for the Beatles is great. So yeah, it was exciting. The Beatles weren't perfect bosses, because they weren't entirely consistent. They were brilliant bosses, creative and amazing and interesting, but they didn't always agree about everything. There wasn't a clear course of action, and they all had their own favorite people that they wanted to work with and so on. So it could be a bit complicated, but it was a fun company, and people forget that we did actually make some good records and get them out and have some hits. So it was an interesting time.
We don't have forever, so I've been interviewing kind of Elvis's friends. He didn't have many. And I talked to Larry Geller, his hairdresser. You were there when the Beatles met Elvis, correct?
No.
Oh, you did? Okay. So, pardon me, I'm wrong.
That's okay. No. I'd like to have been there.
Why?
I could make up a whole lot of stories.
No, I gotta hurry because I don't want anyone to get mad at me.
I'll interject here. You did see Elvis in Las Vegas.
I saw Elvis the first time in Vegas, yes.
What year?
I don't know.
Okay.
It was the beginning, right? The International Hotel.
I think it was the first time he was in Vegas. Might have been
69?
Yeah.
I don't know the name.
Why did the Beatles dump Pete Best?
Because he wasn't as good a drummer as Ringo.
Okay. And that's it?
That's all I'm aware of.
Okay. Okay, I gotta hurry. Okay,
Sorry, but I didn't.
I assume you want to ask about James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt.
yes, I gotta, please.
Allow me to help.
Okay.
So,
Tell me about that. James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt.
Well, they're two separate stories. In James's case, the key figure is a guitar player called Danny Korchmar, who had accompanied Peter and Gordon on some American tours, an American guitar player, and we became great friends. And he was subsequently in a band with his childhood friend James Taylor. When that band broke up, it was Danny who gave James my phone number because James was going to London to visit, and he said, if you're going to be in London, call my friend Peter, he's okay. And so James called me up, and that's why he came over to my house and played me some songs. He didn't know I'd got a new job at the time as head of A&R for Apple. So that's how we met, and I fell in love with his music and worked as his producer and eventually his manager as well, and bet my career on his. Linda, I was in New York doing something else, and somebody told me I had to go and see this girl who was singing at the bitter end, that had this most amazing voice that was, extremely beautiful to boot. and it was all true. So I got to know Linda that evening and talked to her. I didn't start managing her right away for various reasons, but eventually I ended up first producing her, trying to help her finish the album she was working on. And then we made a whole new album together, which was Hot Like a Wheel. And at that time I also took over her management as well.
Well, I appreciate one. Where were you the day that Mr. Lennon died?
I was having lunch with Peter Brown at a restaurant called Le Dome in Los Angeles with my wife and a whole bunch of friends who actually found out in the middle of lunch. Because Peter Brown, of course, got an immediate phone call, so it was on the news right as they were phoning Peter with an update. So, you know, we were all very much taken aback. I mean, Peter Brown was closer to John than I was, but most of the people at lunch, as I recall, were people who knew John to some degree or another. So it was horrifying. But in a way, the fact that we were all there together getting the news was better than everyone finding out separately in separate phone calls or watching the news. But it was a strange coincidence that I was there with Peter Brown, who was given this lunch.
Last question. Do you still talk to Dave Clark?
Not for a long time. I mean, no, I haven't talked to him. I mean, we were never close friends, but
Okay.
I talked to him sometimes, but not for a number of years, quite a number of years.
Thank you for speaking with me.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
No.
Sorry to rush you.
No, I appreciate the size of stuff, please.
Sure.
I understand you squeezed me in, and that's
Thank you.
more than. Will you take a picture?
Sure.
You gotta look
Absolutely.
through there, sir.
Yeah, look at the glasses, just so that I have it all together.
And what is this?
And,
What is?
and your book is great. I've read it the last few days.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's very interesting.
Thank you. Shall I do this to you, or?
Yeah, to Charles. That's my name.
And what is this for?
I have a magazine, and I have a YouTube station, and I do a morning show occasionally. Tomorrow morning, I interviewed Angie Dickinson recently.
Oh,
And then,
she's a friend of mine. Yeah.
Oh, she was lovely.
Yeah.
Let me get a picture of her.
Okay.
One more.
Let's hang on. What's up?
You might have to go a little lower.
No, I think you're okay.
Okay.
I saw it on the screen there.
And I interviewed
Good.
Rich Little and Sergio Mendes the other day.
Okay.
So I've been trying my best.
So when you say it's on a, what is it on? It's on
I have a YouTube station that I'm going to put it up, but they told me to wait, not to post anything to come out before you come out next time. Because you're coming out next March, correct?
February, March.
Oh, I
So
guess.
I have to wait. But the last interview I posted for Gary Puckett, I can't believe it, 100,000 people saw it. It's a lot of people.
Yes.
Shocking, is it?
Oh, nice.
I'm very fortunate. Again, I don't want to keep you. Thank
Okay.
you so much. And
Thank you
thanks
very
for
much.
some of my stuff. And I'm going to watch your show if you don't mind.